I was never supposed to wake up in that facility, but I did. And that was the exact moment I realized my marriage was not a partnership, but a hostile takeover. Imagine coming home to find the locks changed on your front door. Now imagine the locks being changed on your entire reality. My name is Corinne, and 3 years ago, my husband, Vance, and his mistress, Harper, decided that my twin daughters were the perfect missing pieces for their new life together. Vance was a senior executive in corporate logistics, a man who spent his days optimizing supply chains and eliminating redundancies. I didn't realize until it was too late that he viewed me as a redundancy. He didn't use physical force to remove me from my own home. That's for amateurs. He used a highly coordinated strike of wire fraud, medical malpractice, and judicial manipulation. While I was grieving the sudden passing of my mother and managing the transfer of her massive estate, Vance made his move. He paid a corrupt private physician to prescribe me a heavy cocktail of sedatives under the guise of grief management. Then, while I was incapacitated, he had me transported to an exclusive, highly discreet psychiatric ward. He presented a family court judge with a forged, meticulously crafted history of my alleged mental instability. By the time the chemical haze finally cleared and my legal team managed to secure my release, the damage was completely codified in the legal system. Harper was already living in my custom-built home. She was wearing my imported silk robes, hosting dinner parties with my vintage crystal, and playing mother to my daughters. The strategy Vance used was simple but devastating. He claimed I had suffered a total psychological collapse due to the inheritance stress. He used the manufactured chaos to secure an emergency, exclusive custody order. And because Harper presented herself as a stable, nurturing figure who tragically couldn't have biological children of her own, the court viewed them as the perfect, immediate solution. They were hailed as the miracle couple who stepped up when the biological mother supposedly broke down. They thought I would just disappear into the background, a defeated woman who would be pathetically grateful for court-mandated supervised visits in a sterile municipal building. But they missed a glaring detail in their hostile takeover. My mother didn't just leave me liquid cash. She left me the controlling interest in the primary commercial real estate firm that owned the very buildings Vance used for his logistics company. For 3 long years, I played the part of the compliant, broken victim. I moved into a small, deliberately unremarkable apartment on the other side of the city. I attended every single supervised visit right on time. I sat in silence while Harper offered me condescending advice on mindfulness and emotional regulation. I let her post highly filtered photos of my children on her social media. Captions always reading things like the family I was always destined to have. I needed them to feel completely, utterly safe. Because safety breeds arrogance, and arrogance breeds a paper trail. While Vance and Harper were spending their weekends at the country club, acting like local royalty, I was spending my nights in a secure conference room with a specialized team of 4 forensic accountants and 3 corporate private investigators. We weren't looking for text messages or hotel receipts. We were looking for a commercial lease breach, massive tax evasion, and intellectual property theft. Vance had started a new boutique consulting firm, listing Harper as the silent partner and chief financial officer. He was using his old company's resources to illegally funnel high-net-worth clients into his private venture. Worse, he was using my daughter's trust funds, established by my late mother, to cover the massive overhead of Harper's newly launched, highly unprofitable lifestyle brand. Every single time Vance bought Harper a piece of designer jewelry, he moved money from a restricted escrow account. And every time he initiated that transfer, he committed federal wire fraud. We discovered that Vance was using a complex web of offshore shell companies based in the Cayman Islands to hide the skimmed profits. He thought that by routing the digital currency through international servers, he was untouchable. But he made the most arrogant mistake possible. He was executing these transfers using a laptop that was technically owned by my commercial real estate firm. Every keystroke was logged. Every digital signature was time-stamped, and every transfer of intellectual property was geolocated. By the end of the second year, I had the exact digital signatures, I had the IP address logs, I even secured a sworn recorded testimony from the corrupt physician's former assistant, detailing the illegal kickbacks Vance provided to forge my commitment papers. But I didn't strike yet. Revenge is a financial instrument that must only be executed when the market is perfectly aligned. I had to wait for the forensic audit to be absolutely bulletproof. I waited for the 3rd anniversary of their grand union. They were hosting a massive catered gala at the estate to officially launch Harper's brand. The guest list was packed with the city's financial elite, local politicians, and influential investors. Vance wanted to cement his status as a kingmaker. So I decided to let him put the crown on his head right before I cut off the power. That morning, I didn't show up for my scheduled supervised visit. I ignored the taunting messages Harper sent me about how my daughters were wearing matching dresses she designed. Instead, I walked into the district attorney's office alongside a representative from the Securities and Exchange Commission. I didn't bring emotions. I brought a 600-page evidentiary dossier detailing custody fraud, racketeering, and the systematic embezzlement of a minor's trust fund. The first strike of the operation was the asset seizure. At precisely 2 o'clock in the afternoon, while the event planners were setting up the champagne towers on the back lawn, every single one of Vance's corporate and personal accounts was frozen by federal order. The SEC initiated an emergency lockdown under the immediate suspicion of multiple counts of wire fraud. At 4 o'clock, as Harper was upstairs getting her makeup professionally done, a representative from the commercial bank arrived at the front gates. He wasn't on the guest list. He was there to serve a mandatory notice of a legal lockout. Vance had used the estate as collateral for a massive commercial loan to fund Harper's business. A loan acquired using forged equity documents. Upon the filing of federal fraud charges, the bank immediately moved to reclaim the property. I watched from a tinted SUV parked discreetly down the street. I saw the makeup artists sprint out the front door. I watched the catering trucks rapidly pack up their equipment because their corporate cards had just been violently declined. Then, the sheriff's department arrived. This was no longer a civil dispute over a broken marriage. The sheriff possessed a specialized warrant for Vance's immediate arrest. The charges were staggering: custody fraud, forgery of medical documents, intellectual property theft, and 14 distinct counts of grand larceny. When the armed officers walked through those custom mahogany doors, Vance tried to utilize his corporate negotiation voice. He tried to claim it was a massive clerical error, a misunderstanding with the IRS. The lead sheriff didn't care about his corporate jargon. He only cared about securing the handcuffs. Harper was hysterical on the front steps. She was screaming to the officers that she had nothing to do with the financial side of the business. But her signature was on every single tax return as the chief financial officer. She had willingly accepted the stolen trust money to fund her vanity projects. Under the strict letter of the law, she wasn't a naive victim. She was an active accomplice to asset concealment. As Vance was forcefully marched out in front of his arriving elite guests, his prestigious colleagues, and the children he had manipulated, I stepped out of the SUV. I didn't scream. I didn't shed a single tear. I calmly walked up to the lead officer and handed him the emergency, signed judicial order that instantly reinstated my full, unsupervised legal custody of my daughters. The expression on Vance's face wasn't one of betrayal. It was pure, unadulterated financial terror. He realized in that exact moment that for the past 1,095 days, I hadn't been recovering in a small apartment. I had been hunting him down to the last decimal point. "You can't do this to us, Corinne," he hissed. his face pale as the officer pushed him toward the patrol car. "Think of the girls!" "I am thinking of them," I replied, my voice completely dead of emotion. "I'm thinking about the fact that their trust fund is about to be reimbursed with the liquidation of your entire existence. And I'm thinking about how Harper is going to enjoy learning about federal asset forfeiture." The ensuing legal aftermath was a masterclass in clinical liquidation. Because of the documented intellectual property theft, I leveraged my commercial real estate firm to sue Vance's boutique agency into absolute bankruptcy. I initiated a forensic recovery process that clawed back every single stolen cent from Harper's business accounts. Harper attempted to file a countersuit for emotional distress, publicly claiming she was manipulated by Vance. But my investigators uncovered a heavily encrypted email chain, where she openly mocked my psychiatric commitment and discussed the easiest ways to drain the trust funds. Her lawsuit was instantly dismissed with extreme prejudice. With her assets frozen and her reputation completely annihilated, Harper lost the luxury vehicles, the designer wardrobe, and the social standing she had traded her morality to acquire. The last I heard from my lawyers, she was working an entry-level retail job 3 states away, living in a weekly rental, permanently burdened by massive legal debt from her failed criminal defense. Vance wasn't so lucky. He is currently serving a mandatory 9-year sentence in a federal penitentiary for wire fraud and embezzlement. It turns out his aggressive corporate logistics skills hold absolutely zero value in the prison system. The estate was returned to my name. The locks have been changed yet again. But this time, I am the only one holding the keys. People often ask me how I managed to stay so incredibly patient for 3 years. How I could force myself to sit through those agonizing supervised visits, smiling politely at the 2 parasites who stole my entire life. But they fundamentally misunderstand the nature of the game. True justice isn't a fleeting emotional release. It's a meticulously balanced spreadsheet. And I wasn't just waiting for a hollow apology. I was waiting for the auditors to finalize the report. Today, my daughters are thriving. We relocated to a new city to ensure they wouldn't be tainted by the public fallout. They don't remember much of the woman who tried to replace me. To them, those 3 years were just a confusing, temporary detour. But to me, they were the ultimate education in corporate warfare. Never underestimate a mother who has had everything stripped away from her, because she will spend every waking second of her life calculating the exact formula required to make sure you lose everything you ever valued. The world might think I am just a survivor of a terrible marriage, but the forensic accountants know the cold, hard truth. I am the one who permanently closed the books.